fast food restaurant supply chains are surviving the pandemic. To talk about it today, I'm joined by Andrea Sordi. He is clinical assistant professor at the Haslam College of Business and the Global Supply Chain Institute, University of Tennessee. Hello, Andrea. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So I want to start by talking about Taco Bell specifically. The announcement that later this year they will begin testing a Beyond Meat product, which is an interesting development in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know if it'll still be the middle of the pandemic by that time, but it is a bit of a risk, I would think. Is that an issue, do you think? And what do you think the situation might be as they attempt to do that at this time?
Well, I think I think Taco Bell is probably better placed than other food chain and fast food chain in the U.S. Than many others. I mean, their business is mainly U.S. based, is mainly drive-through based, which is a kind of a competitive advantage in this situation in the pandemic. I think the challenge is going to be in understanding the consumer reaction to such a new product, more than the distribution. I think the understanding the demand, the sensing the demand, and the ability to fulfill that demand in terms of capacity will probably be the most challenging part of the supply chain for them. It's a new consumer area, a new consumer segment that they are trying to tap into. And, I see the drive-through business as kind of a impulse business. So consumer are going to drive through, ask for the new product. If the product is there, great. If it's not there, well, they must not probably come back again and they're going to be feeling disappointed. So I think the challenge is going to get that started very well right off the gate.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense how fast food chains have done during the pandemic compared with sit-down restaurants?
Well, definitely they had the advantage to have a business model that was built on a digital platform and on an agility that is different from sitting chains. I mean, the fact that if you think a traditional restaurant, I mean, the distance in people cut the presence of people by 25 or even 50%, but by that your sales goes down immediately. I mean, if you look at Taco Bell or other part of Yum as a group, probably perform a little bit better than others because they leverage the scale of their franchising as a capability in the supply chain. Particularly Taco Bell that we were discussing just before, having their business most predominantly in the US and predominantly on a drive-through base of about 70%, was fast ready off the gate than many others. The disruption was a little bit less than many others. And actually, if you look the recent financial result of the group, well, Taco Bell increased their sales by 1%, while the others were more suffering in their financials.
How interesting. But at the same time, I understand that they were cutting some aspects of the menu, especially some vegetarian options, I assume to keep costs down and to take out things that weren't so popular. Is that the case, that they've been downscaling their menu all this time as well?
I think it's more about decomplexifying the supply chain and ensure that they were able to serve the basics to their consumers. I mean, it's not something that happens all in the fast food industry. I mean, many other industries. I've been in the food industry for many years, but even the food industry has gone back to basics into the early days of the pandemic. They cut many SKUs and they focus on the big items that consumer absolutely wanted anyway. So I think the move there was more decomplexifying the supply chain, going through the odd time of the pandemic, get the business floating, and then as soon as possible revamp some of those choices into the menus. And what they're doing now with this new, plant-based meat is, adding up on a certain product, a certain choices for consumer, and expanding their consumer base to meat-like consumer that still want to enjoy vegetarian options.
Do you know, are they the first of the major fast food chains to introduce a Beyond Meat type of product?
No, there have been some examples in the industry that have been already done, but I think they're more kind of a test and learn examples. They're not very very big launches. Now, Taco Bell has been recognized kind of the vegetarian choice of for consumers. So in the mind of a consumer, that's the target, and it's kind of an affordable choice. So the two facts put together for me is kind of a winning game. I mean, you tap into a new consumer segment with a brand that is a more widespread and recognized as affordable. That could be a winning combinations especially for new generations.
I see. So they're in a little better shape than some of the others to do that. Another aspect, though, of I would think a problem with fast food restaurants in general would be the labor situation in the middle of the pandemic. They are heavily staffed in the back of those restaurants, and people are working shoulder to shoulder. How have fast food restaurants been able to stay open with the employee situation, keeping their employees healthy?
Well, first of all, they had to close some of their stores. I mean, Taco Bell had to close several stores. They were quicker in reopening some of them. They're still not full speed, but I think the safety conditions that I put in place. I mean, if you go and walk through and drive through one of those restaurants, I mean, there are distance kept, the safety protections and the PPE protection that they provide to their employees. It's quite impressive, you know, and that's the way they keep them safe. They keep them joining the workplace every day, and ultimately their business is based on that workforce, so that they have all their interest to keep them safe and keeping coming to work every day if they want to stay open longer and in business.
Yeah, but you say that there may have been some stores that had to be closed down, but even so, I'm surprised that as many stayed open as they did, given just the way that labor works in the kitchens of those
They've been
restaurants.
pretty agile. I mean, they've been distancing. I mean, if you go and see, they've been distancing more people. I think they have reshaped the flow of the process inside of the stores in a way that is the touch points and the proximity is less than before. But definitely they perform much better than many others.
Yeah. What about Taco Bell and in general fast food restaurant supply chains, the upstream supply chains, where they're getting their food, where they're sourcing? Given the given the disruptions that we've seen in supply chains over the last year, have these restaurants had to change their sourcing patterns, where they get the stuff, how much they pay for it, and how frequently they get it, and just stuff like that?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily only for the fast food chains. The challenge, I'd say, we're seeing the supply chain kind of a right shoring or right sourcing decisions that happens all along different industry. I think probably the fact that those kind of fast food chains are more likely to leverage especially franchising organizations like Taco Bell's or Yum,
Right.
leverage their scales and across very different restaurants. So most of their purchasing are at large scale, and they have the ability to diversify their supplier base, both the distance sourcing with closer sourcing and keep that agility. Definitely, I don't think they can afford increasing prices. I mean, they are an affordable kind of a business. And then they need to find a way to keep costs contained, but through scale, but also making sure that they have that agility and they manage the supply continuity, which in many cases is nearshoring is probably the response to that challenge.
Right. But you mentioned these very professional, very skilled purchasing organizations that do this on behalf of each of the chains, even though they're franchises. I would imagine they have a lot of clout given the high volume of purchasing that they do, that they can pretty much get what they need when they need it. Others may have to get in line behind them, but I would think that they're pretty much up there getting their needs filled, right?
It is, you're right. And the other fact is that potentially, I mean, there are two facts. One, being a franchising, I mean, a global franchising, as many other industry, they experienced firsthand what happened in China. So they experienced the impact of pandemic earlier on. They were able to get the learning and reflect the learning into the rest of the chain and adapting faster.
Mhm.
And probably their risk management plans were much stronger than many other industry or many other food restaurant chains, and therefore their adaptability has been quicker to the situation than in other cases.
Mhm. Well, I guess it seems that the pandemic hasn't stopped a operation like Taco Bell from being creative. They have to keep changing their menu to keep up, and it sounds like they're prepared, as are some of the other restaurants, for a eventual recovery, whenever that might come. But Andrea Sordi of the University of Tennessee, thank you very much for talking to me today about this vital industry. I really appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thank you very much.